My name is Amara Johnson. I want to share with you my life where I fell in love with a charming man, but a day thing turned out so bad he kicked me just because I had used from his money for my treatment. Before starting, I request you to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this because very like and subscribe matters, and comment where you are listening this from. So let me start at the beginning. I grew up in Atlanta, in a neighborhood called Cascade Heights, a historically Black community that was prosperous, tight-knit, and filled with pride. My parents, James and Rebecca Johnson, were the kind of people who believed that hard work was the answer to everything. My father was a postal worker. He woke up at 5 a.m. every morning, put on his uniform, and delivered mail to thousands of homes. He did this for 32 years without complaint. He wasn't wealthy, but he was dependable. He was steady. My mother was a nurse at Grady Memorial Hospital. She worked 12-hour shifts, often on nights and weekends, caring for people who had nowhere else to go. Her feet would hurt so badly by the end of her shifts that she could barely walk, but she never complained. She would just soak her feet in warm water and Epsom salt and tell us stories about the patients she had helped that day. "People are suffering, babies," she would tell me and my younger brother Marcus. "The world is hard and unfair, but we can make it a little softer. We can make it a little kinder." Both of them worked so hard, and for what? Not for luxury, not for excess. They worked so that Marcus and I could have a good education. They worked so we could have food on the table. They worked so we could feel secure and loved. Our home was modest, a 3-bedroom house with a front porch and a small backyard. My mother grew vegetables in that backyard: tomatoes, collard greens, okra, snap peas. Every weekend she would spend hours tending to those plants, and every summer our kitchen would overflow with fresh produce. "You grow your own food," my mother would say. "You never have to depend on anyone else to feed you." That lesson would save my life one day. My father taught me about responsibility. "Amara," he would say, sitting on that front porch in the summer heat, "your name means grace in Swahili. You're named after strength and elegance. Never forget that. Never let anyone treat you like you're less than that." He taught me to stand up straight. He taught me to look people in the eye. He taught me to speak my truth. My mother taught me about compassion. She showed me how to care for people. She showed me how to notice when someone was hurting and how to sit with them in that pain. Together, they taught me that my life was mine, that I should never depend on someone else to validate my worth, that I should build my own foundation, brick by brick. I was a good student. I was the type of kid who sat in the front row, raised her hand constantly, and stayed up late doing extra credit assignments. I wasn't trying to be perfect. I was trying to be useful. I was trying to prove that I deserved the sacrifices my parents were making for me. My teachers noticed. By high school, I was recruited by colleges all over the country. I chose to stay in Atlanta. I went to Spelman College, one of the most prestigious historically Black colleges in the country. I majored in business administration because I wanted to understand how to build things, how to create something from nothing. Spelman was transformative. I was surrounded by brilliant Black women who were going to change the world. We studied together in the library until midnight. We talked about our dreams and our ambitions. We supported each other. I graduated summa cum laude. I got a job at a marketing firm downtown. I was making decent money, $55,000 a year, and I was good at my job. I worked in brand strategy, helping small and medium-sized businesses figure out who they were and how to tell their story. I was building a good life. I had my own apartment, I was saving money, I was independent. And then I met David. I met David Thompson at a networking event in downtown Atlanta. It was a Black entrepreneurs meet and greet at a hotel ballroom. I was there representing my firm. He was there because he said he was starting a real estate investment company. He was handsome, tall, dark-skinned, with a confident smile and an easy way of talking to people. He wore an expensive suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. He came up to me at the cocktail bar. "You look like someone who knows what she's doing," he said, extending his hand. "David Thompson, Real Estate Development." "Amara Johnson, Brand Strategy." "Brand strategy," he repeated. "That sounds like you help people figure out who they are." "Essentially, yes," I said. "Well, I think you're brilliant," he said, and something in his eyes was warm and genuine. "Would you want to get coffee sometime? I'd love to pick your brain about building a brand for my company." I should have been suspicious. I had dated men before, and I knew what it felt like when someone was actually interested in you versus when they were just trying to impress you. But David seemed different. He seemed genuinely interested in what I did. We got coffee the next week, then dinner, then we started dating. Those first 3 months were magical. He took me to nice restaurants, he bought me flowers, he listened to my ideas and asked thoughtful questions. He told me about his vision for his real estate company, how he wanted to buy run-down properties and develop them into affordable housing for Black families. "I want to build wealth in our community," he told me one evening as we walked through Grant Park. "I want to show people that we can create opportunity for ourselves. We don't need anyone's permission." I fell for him, hard. After 6 months of dating, he asked me to move in with him. He had a beautiful apartment in a high-rise in Buckhead, the wealthy part of Atlanta. He wanted me to move in with him. "I want to wake up next to you. I want to build something with you." I was hesitant. My mother had raised me to be independent, not to rush into these things. But I also felt like I was being offered something special. He was offering me partnership, stability, a shared vision. So I moved in. Within a month, things started to feel different. The first sign was small. We were at a grocery store, and I put food in the cart: chicken, vegetables, rice, beans, eggs, things we needed. David looked at what I was buying, and his jaw tightened. "Why are you getting all of that?" I asked, confused. "Because we need to eat." "We need to eat," he said, "but we don't need all of it." He put the chicken back, he put the vegetables back, he left a loaf of bread, some peanut butter, and a gallon of milk. "That's barely anything," I said. "That's enough," he said firmly. "I'm not spending money on unnecessary things. Every dollar I spend on groceries is a dollar I can invest in my business." I was stunned. I had never met anyone who worried about money in this way. My parents had always made sure we had enough to eat. Quality food was never considered a luxury in our house. It was a necessity. "David, people need to eat," I said carefully. "People need to eat," he agreed, "but they don't need expensive food. We have bread and milk, that's fine." And that was my first lesson in what I would later realize was David's philosophy. Money was meant to be accumulated, not spent. Money was meant to be guarded, protected, hoarded. It was not meant to be used for things like adequate nutrition. At first, I didn't understand what was happening. I thought maybe David was just going through a phase. Maybe his business was struggling and he was being cautious. But his business wasn't struggling. I would occasionally overhear his phone calls with business partners. He was doing well. He was making deals, he was making money, but he was not spending it. I started to notice patterns.
He would come home from work and expect dinner to be ready. If I hadn't cooked, if there wasn't a hot meal waiting for him, he would get angry. "I work hard all day," he would say, his voice cold. "I provide for this household. The least you can do is have food ready when I get home." "I work too," I would say, trying to keep my voice even. "I also have a job. I work 8 hours a day, just like you." "Your job doesn't matter," he said. "My job is what pays for this apartment. My job is what matters. Your contribution is taking care of the home." This was confusing to me because at the beginning he had praised my career. He had said he loved how ambitious I was. But now, suddenly, my career was less important than his. My ambitions were less important than his. I tried to adjust. I started leaving work early so I could cook dinner. I started spending my evenings preparing meals with the meager groceries we had: bread, peanut butter, rice, beans, occasional chicken when I could convince David that we needed it. The meals were not great. I was trying to create something nutritious and delicious out of almost nothing, and it was difficult. David still complained. "This tastes bland," he would say, pushing food around his plate. "This is disgusting." "I did the best I could with what we have," I would say quietly. "Well, do better," he would say, and he would go into the bedroom and close the door, leaving me to eat alone at the kitchen table. I would sit there with my plate of bland food, and I would think about my mother's kitchen, full of fresh vegetables and herbs, with food that tasted like love. I would think about my mother's strength, and I would wonder why I wasn't strong enough to leave this man. As time went on, David's need to control money extended beyond groceries. He wanted to know how much I was making. He wanted to see my paychecks. He wanted me to give him my bank account information. "I need to manage the finances," he said. "I need to know where every dollar is going." "I can manage my own finances," I said, pushing back gently. "No," he said. His voice was sharp. "You can't. Women are not good with money. You'll spend it on frivolous things. I need to make sure our money is used wisely." I had a master's degree in business administration. I worked in brand strategy. I had managed my own finances successfully for years. But I was starting to question myself. David was so confident in his assertions. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was bad with money. Against my better judgment, I gave him access to my bank account. Within 2 weeks, he had transferred my entire savings, $23,000, to his account. "What are you doing?" I asked, panicking. "Building our future," he said calmly. "That money was just sitting there. I'm investing it. We're going to make more money." "That was my money," I said, my voice shaking. "Money I earned." "You earned it because you live in my apartment, eat the food I provide, wear clothes I buy for you," he said. "You didn't earn that money on your own. It's ours, and I know how to use it better than you do." I felt like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. This wasn't what I had signed up for. This wasn't the partnership I thought I was entering. But I didn't leave. Instead, I did what so many women in terrible situations do. I made excuses. He was stressed about his business. He was worried about the future. He was just trying to provide for us. I stayed. By our second year together, the situation had become unbearable. I was not only working at my job, but also coming home and cooking meals from almost nothing. I was not only working, but also cleaning the entire apartment, doing all the laundry, handling all the household tasks. And when things weren't perfect, when the meal wasn't hot enough, when a shirt wasn't ironed properly, when the apartment wasn't clean to his standards, he would rage. "I do everything for you," he would shout. "I work hard, I provide for you, and this is how you repay me, with incompetence and laziness?" "David, I'm doing my best," I would say, trying to stay calm. "Your best is not good enough," he would say coldly, and then he would walk away, leaving me alone with my shame. The worst was when I would come home after working all day and there would be no ingredients to cook with. I would have asked him to stop by the store, but he always said it was too expensive, that we didn't need anything, so I would cook what I could: rice with salt, beans with rice, pasta with butter. And when he came home and saw what I had made, he would explode. "This is what you cooked for me?" he would say, his voice dripping with disgust. "This is what I get? Slop?" "There's no money for groceries," I would say. "You said we couldn't afford." "That's not my problem," he would say. "You're the woman. You're supposed to figure it out. You're supposed to provide. Don't blame me for your failure." On those nights, when the food wasn't what he wanted, when his hunger was met with disappointment, he would hit me. The first time, I was so shocked that I didn't even fully process what had happened. We were in the kitchen, he was angry about dinner, he raised his hand and slapped me across the face so hard that I fell to the ground. I lay there on the kitchen floor with my hand touching my cheek, which was burning with pain and shock. "That's for being incompetent," he said, stepping over me to go to the bedroom. I stayed there on the floor for a long time, just breathing, trying to understand how I had gotten here. The second time, I was more prepared. I knew it was coming. I could see the anger building in his eyes as he walked through the door and saw that I had only made rice and beans again. He didn't say anything. He just walked over to me, grabbed my arm, and twisted it. "You're hurting me," I said, trying to pull away. "Good," he said. "Maybe pain will teach you to do better." The third time, the fourth time, the fifth time, it became almost routine. If I failed to meet his expectations, if I wasn't good enough, he would hurt me. I started wearing long sleeves to work to cover the bruises. I started telling people I was clumsy when they noticed marks on my face. My coworkers started asking questions, but I deflected. I couldn't tell them the truth. How could I tell them that I was in an abusive relationship? How could I admit that I had given a man control over my money, my body, my life? I was ashamed. I stayed in that relationship for 3 years. 3 years of being told I wasn't good enough. 3 years of being hit when I failed to meet impossible standards. 3 years of having my labor, both at work and at home, devalued and disrespected. 3 years of becoming smaller and smaller, quieter and quieter, less and less myself. My mother noticed during one of my rare visits home. "Baby, what's wrong with your arm?" she asked, seeing a bruise peeking out from under my sleeve. "Nothing," I said quickly. "I bumped into something at work." My mother looked at me for a long moment. She didn't say anything, but I could see the fear in her eyes. I could see that she suspected the truth. I didn't want her to worry. I didn't want her to know that her strong daughter, the one she had raised to stand tall and speak her truth, had become a victim of abuse. So I stopped visiting. I isolated myself from my family, from my friends, from anyone who might ask questions. All I had was David, and David had made sure that was exactly where I stood. Then came the day that changed everything. I was at work, in a meeting with clients about a new brand strategy, when my phone buzzed. It was a calendar alert that a doctor's appointment I had scheduled weeks ago. I dismissed it and went back to the meeting. 20 minutes later, I was working at my desk, typing up notes from the meeting, when I smelled smoke. At first, I thought it was someone's cigarette, but the smell got stronger, more acrid. I looked around and I could see smoke beginning to creep out from under the door of the supply closet next to my desk. "Fire!" I yelled, and immediately people started moving toward the exits. I called 911 while my coworkers were evacuating. "There's a fire at our office," I told the dispatcher, giving the address. "It looks like it's in the supply closet. We're evacuating now." "Fire trucks are on the way," she said. "Get out of the building." I grabbed my phone and my bag and ran for the exit with everyone else. We all stood outside on the street as the fire department arrived, their trucks pulling up with sirens blaring. The firefighters rushed into the building. They got the fire under control quickly. It had been an electrical fire in a faulty outlet that had ignited some cardboard boxes full of printer paper. But in my rush to get out, I had gotten close to the fire. I had a second-degree burn on my arm and a few minor first-degree burns on my hands. The paramedics wrapped my arm and applied burn cream. They strongly recommended that I go to the hospital to get proper medical attention. "It's not that bad," I said, adrenaline making me downplay the severity. "I'll just go home and take care of it." "You should still get it checked out," the paramedic said. "Burns can be tricky." "I'll be fine," I insisted. I wasn't fine. The burns were painful. I stopped by a drugstore on my way home and spent $85 on proper burn cream, bandages, and pain medication. I knew David would be angry about the expense, but my arm was literally burned. There was no way around it. I got home before David did and wrapped my arm carefully, trying to make the bandages as unobtrusive as possible. When David came home, he immediately noticed. "What happened?" he asked, his voice sharp. "There was a fire at work," I said. "It was an electrical fire. I got out, but I got a little burned. I bought some bandages and cream. I'm okay." He stared at me for a long moment. His face went from surprised to angry to something else, something darker and more dangerous. "You spent money," he said quietly. "It was an emergency," I said. "I have burns, David. I had to—" "You spent money," he repeated, louder. "It was only $85, I said, "for medical supplies. I couldn't just leave my burns untreated." He walked toward me slowly. I took an involuntary step backward. "How much money did you spend?" he asked. $85, I repeated. "David, it was necessary. The paramedics recommended—" He raised his hand and slapped me. Not the controlled slaps of before. This was full force, all his rage channeled into that single blow. I fell to the ground. And then he started kicking me. His foot connected with my ribs, my stomach, my legs, over and over again. I tried to curl into a ball to protect myself, but he was too strong, too angry. "You're so stupid," he shouted as he kicked me. "So incredibly stupid. You burned yourself and then you spent money that I earned, money that you had no right to spend." "Stop," I cried. "Please stop." But he didn't stop. He kept kicking me, kept screaming at me, kept telling me what a failure I was. Finally, he stopped. He was breathing hard and his face was red with rage and exertion. "Look at what you made me do," his voice almost sad. "Look at what you made me become. If you weren't so useless and incompetent, I wouldn't have to do this." I lay on the floor, my entire body screaming with pain. My burned arm was bleeding where his kicks had torn open the bandages. My ribs felt like they were broken. I was gasping for breath. And in that moment, lying on that floor, I understood something with absolute clarity. This would never stop. He would never change. He would never be grateful. He would never love me. And I could not stay. I didn't go to the hospital. I was afraid he would see my medical records, would know that I had gone, would hurt me again for seeking outside help. I just lay in bed that night, my entire body aching, and I made a plan. I didn't execute it that night. I was too hurt, too traumatized. But I executed it the next morning while David was at work. I called my mother. "Mommy," I said, my voice breaking, "I need help. I need to come home." My mother didn't ask questions. She just said, "I'll pick you up in an hour." I packed a bag with the essential items, clothes, my personal documents, my laptop, and nothing else. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter. When my mother arrived, she took one look at my face, still bruised from the slap, and the way I was moving painfully, and I saw her entire body go rigid with rage. "Did he do this?" she asked. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. My mother held me while I cried. "You're never going back there," she said firmly. "Never. Do you understand me? You are never going back to that man." "I know," I whispered, and I meant it. Living with my mother again at 30 years old was humbling, but it was also the beginning of my salvation. My mother didn't judge me. She didn't ask why I hadn't left sooner. She didn't make me feel ashamed for having been a victim of abuse. Instead, she took care of me. She made sure I ate. She applied healing cream to my burns. She sat with me while I cried, and she listened to the horror story of the past 3 years. "I lost myself," I told her one evening as we sat on the front porch. "I don't even recognize who I became." "You didn't lose yourself," my mother said. "You just forgot who you were, but we're going to remember together." The first week, I didn't do anything. I just healed. My ribs were badly bruised but not broken, thankfully. The burns on my arm were painful but would heal. The emotional wounds were deeper, but those could heal too. My mother made fresh collard greens with smoked turkey, cornbread, and black-eyed peas. She made my favorite dessert, sweet potato pie. She made sure I had real food, nourishing food, made with love. After a week, I called my firm and told them I needed a personal leave of absence. I didn't tell them why. They granted me 2 months. During that leave, my mother and I had long conversations about what came next. "We need a plan," my mother said, "not just for getting away from him, but for building a future that he can't touch." "I don't know if I can do this," I said. "I feel like I've lost everything, my confidence, my self-worth, my independence." "You haven't lost anything," my mother said. "Those things are still inside you. They're just sleeping. We're going to wake them up." My mother had been a nurse for 35 years. She was a widow now. My father had passed away 3 years ago, and she had a modest retirement, but she was resourceful and smart. "I have an idea," she said at one afternoon. "Do you remember how I used to make clothes for my friends and my sisters when we were younger?" "Of course," I said. My mother was an incredibly talented seamstress. Growing up, she would make beautiful dresses, pants, and blouses. Her work was intricate and beautiful. She wants to start a business, she said. I want to make custom clothing for professional Black women, dresses for interviews, suits for boardrooms, clothes that make women feel powerful and confident. That's a beautiful idea, I said, but what does that have to do with me? Everything, she said. I can't do it alone. I'm 61 years old. I don't have the energy I used to have. But if you help me, if we build this together, we could create something real, something that belongs to us. I thought about it. I had spent 3 years in a career where I helped other companies build their brands. Why not build something for myself? Okay, I said, let's do it.
We started small. My mother had a sewing room in the back of the house, a space where she had been making clothes as a hobby for decades. We cleared it out and set it up as our workspace. We didn't have much money to invest. My mother's retirement was modest. I had nothing. David had taken my savings. But we had something more valuable. We had each other. We had skills, and we had determination. My mother began by reaching out to her network. She had friends, church members, and clients who had known her for decades. She started taking custom orders for professional women's clothing. I handled the business side. I created a simple website using free templates. I handled the email communication with clients. I started a small social media presence on Instagram and Facebook, posting photos of the pieces my mother was creating. Word of mouth was powerful. My mother's work was beautiful, and the women who bought from her loved it. They started telling their friends. Within 3 months, we had orders backing up. We worked long hours. My mother would sew from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., taking only breaks to eat and rest. I would handle orders, communication, and bookkeeping in the evenings after I had returned to work. 6 months into the business, I went back to my job, but I kept my evenings and weekends free for the clothing business. It was exhausting. Some nights I would come home and immediately start working on orders until midnight. I would wake up on weekends and work until the sun went down. But I was building something, and unlike the years with David, this exhaustion felt purposeful. By the end of the first year, we had made $47,000 in revenue. By the end of the second year, we had made $120,000. We hired a second seamstress, a woman named Patricia, who was incredibly talented. We expanded the sewing room and added more equipment. My mother reduced her hours at the hospital. Eventually, she retired completely to focus on the business full-time. And then, in our second year of business, I discovered an opportunity. I was at a professional women's networking event, and I overheard a woman talking about how difficult it was to find quality, affordable, professional clothing that was tailored to Black women's bodies. I buy from mainstream brands, and nothing ever fits right. It's always made for different body types. I end up spending so much on alterations. That sparked an idea. What if we didn't just make custom clothing? What if we created a line of ready-to-wear professional clothing designed specifically for Black women? I brought the idea to my mother. We would need significant capital, I said. We would need to invest in manufacturing, in inventory, in marketing. We would need to take a real risk. My mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What's the worst that could happen?" "We could lose everything," I said. "We already lost everything once, when your father died, when you got out of that terrible relationship. And we survived. We're still here. I think we can handle a business risk." So we decided to do it. We took out a small business loan for $50,000. It was a significant amount of money for us, a real risk. We used the money to create the first collection of ready-to-wear professional clothing. We partnered with a small manufacturing company in Atlanta to handle production. We designed pieces that were tailored to different body types and skin tones. We launched the line at a women's expo in Atlanta. It sold out in a single day. We were shocked. We hadn't expected such an immediate response. We quickly produced a second batch. That sold out too. By the end of our second year of the business, we had made $350,000 in revenue. We had paid off the business loan and had a significant amount of cash left over. And then my mother made a decision that would change everything. She said, "I want to invest in the stock market." "The stock market?" I said, surprised. "Mom, that's risky." "I know," she said, "but I've been reading about index funds and growth stocks. I think if we invest this money wisely, we could multiply it." We met with a financial advisor who recommended a diversified portfolio of growth stocks and index funds. It was a moderate risk approach, but it was still a risk. My mother put $150,000 into the market, and then we waited. The stock market is unpredictable. Over the next 3 years, the investments we had made grew steadily. The economy was doing well. Technology stocks were soaring, companies were expanding, and our portfolio was growing with it. By year 3, the $150,000 investment had turned into $450,000. By year 4, it had turned into $800,000. By year 5, it had turned into $1.2 million. My mother and I would sit together in our home office and stare at the numbers on the screen, hardly believing what we were seeing. "We did it," my mother would say, shaking her head. "We actually did it." "You did it," I would correct her. "You had the courage to take the risk." We had transformed ourselves from victims to entrepreneurs. We had built a business, and we had made smart investments. We were now millionaires. But more importantly, we had our freedom, and we had each other. It was 5 years after I had left David. I was 35 years old now, confident in my own skin, proud of what I had built. My mother and I decided to give back. We launched the Johnson Women's Empowerment Foundation, dedicated to helping women, particularly Black women, escape abusive situations and build economic independence. We hosted events, we provided grants, we connected women with job training and legal resources. One Saturday afternoon, we were hosting a community charity event in one of Atlanta's public parks. We had set up a tent with information about our foundation, and we were providing free meals to anyone in the community who wanted them. We had made my mother's famous collard greens, cornbread, black-eyed peas, and fried chicken. My mother was dishing up food, smiling at the people who came through the line. And then I saw him, David. He was thin, much thinner than I remembered him. He was wearing clothes that looked like they had been worn many times, the fabric slightly faded at the edges. He looked tired, worn down. He was in the food line. I watched as he approached the table where my mother was serving. He didn't recognize us. His eyes were down, focused on getting food. My mother dished up a plate and handed it to him with a smile. That's when he looked up and saw me. His face went absolutely white. "Amara?" he said, his voice disbelieving. "What are you doing here?" "I work here," I said calmly. "This is my foundation. We provide meals and support to people in need." He looked around, taking in the tent, the logo, the people being served food.
"This is your foundation?" he said. "How did you... I don't understand." "Take your food," I said, not unkindly, but not warmly either. "This is for people in need. You qualify." "I don't want charity from you," he said, but he didn't put the plate down. "Then you don't eat," I said simply. "Those are your options." He stood there, holding the plate, his pride warring with his hunger. Finally, he walked away without taking the food. But I could see him, later that afternoon, sitting on a bench at a distance, watching us, watching my mother and me, watching the success we had built. He came back the next week, and the week after that. He would come to the events, always keeping his distance, always watching. He would take the food but never stay long. He would never speak to me directly. but I could feel his questions hovering in the air between us. Finally, one Saturday, after the event was winding down, he approached me. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. My mother saw him and immediately stepped closer to me, her protective instincts activated, but I held up my hand to let her know it was okay. "We can talk," I said, "but not here. I don't want you near my mother or our foundation's space." He nodded. We went to a quiet corner of the park, away from the crowds. "How did you do this?" he asked, gesturing back toward the tent and the equipment and the whole operation. "How did you build something like this?" "I worked," I said simply. "My mother and I worked. We started a business together. We built something real." "What kind of business?" he asked. I told him about the clothing line, about the custom designs, about the ready-to-wear collection, about the success we had achieved. His face grew darker as I spoke. "With what money?" he asked. "You didn't have any money when you left." "I had my salary," I said, "and my mother had her savings. We invested that in our business." "But that's impossible," he said. "You made $65,000 a year at your job. That's not enough to build a business that would generate enough capital to create what you've created." No, I agreed, it wasn't enough. But we reinvested our profits. We grew the business, and then we invested in the stock market. "The stock market?" he repeated, like it was a foreign concept. "Yes," I said. "We made smart investments. We diversified. We took calculated risks, and we were rewarded for it." He sat down on a nearby bench, looking defeated. "I don't understand," he said. "I was so careful with money. I saved, I invested, I did everything right, and I still ended up here, poor, alone." "You did everything wrong," I said, and my voice was not unkind, but it was firm. "You confused accumulation with wealth. You thought that by hoarding money, by refusing to spend it on your family, you would become rich. But you forgot that people need to eat, they need to be clothed, they need to be cared for. And when you refuse to invest in people, in your wife, in relationships, in your own family, you're not becoming wealthy, you're becoming poor in every way that matters." He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. I treated you badly, and I lost you, and now I'm paying for it." "Yes," I said, "you are, but not because I'm punishing you. You're paying for it because you created the circumstances of your own downfall." "Can you ever forgive me?" he asked. I thought about it. I thought about the pain, the fear, the humiliation. I thought about the bruises and the burns and the nights I cried myself to sleep, and I realized something. I had already forgiven him, not because he deserved it, but because holding on to the anger was like drinking poison and expecting him to die. "I forgive you, not for your sake, but for mine. I forgive you because I refuse to let you take up any more space in my life or my heart." "Does that mean we could—" "No," I said firmly. "We could not. David, I've moved on. I've built a life without you, a beautiful life, and I'm not going back." David left Atlanta after that. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he had moved to another city, trying to start over. I didn't follow his journey. I didn't care enough to know what happened to him. What I cared about was my life, my mother, my business, my foundation. Over the next 5 years, the Johnson Women's Empowerment Foundation grew significantly. We helped hundreds of women escape abusive relationships. We provided job training and education. We offered micro-grants to help women start their own businesses. And in every single situation, we told the women the same thing. Your life is worth investing in. Your dreams are worth investing in. Your family is worth investing in. Because that's what I had learned. That's what my mother had taught me. The women who succeed are not the ones who hoard their resources. They're the ones who invest in what matters. They invest in their children. They invest in their communities. They invest in themselves. And in doing so, they build true wealth. I'm now 42 years old. My mother is 76 and still incredibly active in the foundation, though she's slowly stepped back from the day-to-day operations.
My mother and I are worth approximately $3.2 million. The foundation has helped over 1,200 women. Our clothing line has expanded to include menswear and accessories. More importantly, I'm happy. I'm at peace. I'm proud of who I am and what I've built. And I look back at the woman I was, the woman who let a man convince her that she wasn't worthy of basic nutrition, that she wasn't capable of handling her own finances, that she deserved to be hit when she failed to meet impossible standards, and I feel such compassion for her. She wasn't weak, she was just learning. She was learning what it meant to be truly strong. Because real strength isn't about never being knocked down. Real strength is about getting back up. Real strength is about knowing your worth and protecting it fiercely. Real strength is building something, brick by brick, hour by hour, with the people you love. And true wealth is not the money in your bank account. It's the love you've built, the impact you've made, the lives you've touched. If you're listening to this story because you're in a situation like I was, if someone is telling you that you're not good enough, that you deserve cruelty, that you need to be smaller and quieter and less, I want you to know you are not the problem. He is. You are not unlovable. He is incapable of love. You are not unworthy. He is unworthy of your love. And your life is too precious, too unique, too important to spend it trying to meet the impossible standards of someone who will never see your value. I also want you to know that leaving is possible. It's scary, it's hard, you might not have anywhere to go or money or a plan, but it is possible. And the life on the other side of that fear, it's worth it. I went from being a woman who was afraid to suggest that we buy chicken at the grocery store. I went from being a woman whose body was hit when her cooking wasn't perfect. I went from being a woman who had surrendered all her control to one person. And I built a life where I have authority over my own destiny, where I have achieved economic independence, where I am respected, valued, and celebrated. That life exists for you too. You just have to be brave enough to step toward it. And one more thing, you don't have to do it alone. Find your person, your mother, your sister, your best friend, your therapist. Find someone who believes in you and will stand beside you while you rebuild. Because the most important investment you can make is in the people you love. That's what my mother taught me. That's what has made all the difference. You cannot build a life of abundance while treating the people you love as though they are luxuries you cannot afford. Every dollar you refuse to spend on your family is a dollar you're robbing them of. Every meal you deny them, every moment of care you withhold, is a deposit in the bank account of resentment, and eventually that account will come due.